Good evening and welcome back to the Oh No 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 podcast, where we are back to take a look at yesterday evening's 1-0 win against Queen of the South, which saw Raith Rovers progress into the quarterfinals of the Challenge Cup. I'm your host this evening, Robbie Weir, and I've joined by two of the other fans who made it along to the game last night. Firstly, joined by Scott Fleming. He's still here. How are you getting on, Scott?
Yeah, doing not too bad, Robbie. It was what will be my last game that I'll get along to whilst I'm back. Sadly, having to go back to work like a lot of folk now. So this weekend flying back to Holland. So no, it was good to get along. It was bloody Baltic, like, but it was good to get a win as well to sign off.
And of course, we're joined by Alan Douglas-Munn as well. How are you getting on, Alan?
I'm alright, yeah. I'm probably the only one who wasn't complaining about the temperature at Straps Park last night, because I've got a wee heater in the announcement box. I had to turn it down to the lower setting. I was getting a bit warm, and that was with my coat off as well.
You're laughing at that. I'm definitely not laughing at that one.
Oh no, yeah. It was a cold one last night.
Yeah,
it's safe to say.
Absolutely. One to again, the bigwigs at the SPFL opting to put on a game in the first week of January is asking for trouble, as we saw with the absolute slew of postponements that came through. I think it was ourselves and Airdrie were the only two teams playing yesterday evening. But the pre-match came through nonetheless. There was only one change for the Rovers. Scott, were you quite surprised at the strength of the starting lineup that Dougie Imrie went with going into this game against Queen of the South, or did you think it was almost to be expected given the sort of financial side that the Challenge Cup now carries?
I was kind of a bit in between. At first, I was a bit more surprised that we did kind of see Imrie go with such a strong team. The more you think about it, it was like, well, we don't actually have that big a squad currently with all the injuries either. So it was not like we could have made 8 changes or 7 changes, anything like that. I did expect more than one, however, but also when you think about it, I know we've discussed it in our group chat before, like, it's a case of, and I think Imrie actually even said it in his interview as well, post-match, is this trophy's now got more sort of money involved in it this season, so there's more money. I mean, last night, winning that, did we not earn about the thick end of 30 grand for getting through last night? So that might end up basically being another player that he can sign. So that's kind of the way that I looked at it, is like, he's going out there thinking, well, also, respect to Queen of the South, they're up there battling at the sort of top end of League One. They're probably one of the stronger teams in that league as well. But I think it's also the fact that, well, we want to try and progress as far as we can, get as much money as we can out of this, and also see what we can bring in January. So I don't blame him for going out and putting as strong a team as he wanted to try and make sure of winning that. However, it would have been, maybe, if you look on the other side, it might have been a bit risky if we had picked up 1 or 2 injuries, then looking ahead into sort of league games coming up as well. So, but at the end of the day, I know we got the win, but I was a wee bit surprised that he did go with such a strong team in the end.
Yeah, I mean, when you get to the breakdown in terms of how it's formatted now, because we were going into that as the round of 16, so or the round of 32 even, it was 30 grand that Queen of the South will have got for getting knocked out last night. And then going into the or no, it's 40 grand even for the round of 16. So then going into the quarterfinals, it's £50,000 for exiting at that point. You've got 75,000 for a losing semi-finalist. Runner up gets 100,000, with the winner getting 150 grand. So Alan, the one change that did come in, Paul Hanlon made his return directly straight into the starting 11. Positive news there. I know that we'd sort of speculated about it, and we were hoping to make sure that with Paul Hanlon that he's fighting fit basically, and that he's ready to come back. Dougie Imrie saying in the Courier, I believe, that it was very much just a precautionary one for him to miss out against Airdrie. How pleasing was that to see him get back into the starting 11 straight away?
Oh, it's massive for us. He's simply for the reason that he is a very, very good centre half. I mean, he's. I don't think it's overstating it to say he is one of the best centre halves in the Championship. There's no doubt about it. I think he walks into every single team. Like he starts for every single team in the Championship. I don't think there's any doubt about it. He's a massive, massive presence for us in that defence. Him and O'Connor are starting to really kind of build up a good understanding. He's got a decent understanding with Josh Ray as well. You feel not that O'Connor and Doherty were fine. They were absolutely fine, but you just feel those two were that they've got a really good understanding together. So yes, it was a Challenge Cup. Yes, you might have kind of eased him back in more gently, but I think he's so important for us that it was important, I think, to get him that time in the legs, so to speak, and get him up to speed so that he's basically hitting the ground running against Arbroath. And it also allows us to. It seems daft for this to be such a big thing already when it only happened for the first time a couple of weeks ago. But it lets us put Jordan Doherty back into the midfield, and he just looks so assured there. And we'll probably come on to talk about who should be in there with him and who maybe needs to find himself on the bench and what have you. But he just looks so assured in there, and we look better, I think, with him in there. So in that sense as well, it was a kind of really big thing to see Hanlon back.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think that with the defence, it naturally just gets pulled up, given his experience, and he's, as you rightfully say, I mean, you can't really fault the defence for how they were performing. Aside from that derby, really, you're across the board, it's generally been pretty solid up the back. Josh Ray's continuing to get clean sheets, but there was one thing that obviously caught us a little bit by surprise. I mean, it had been flagged up prior elsewhere, and I know that I sort of clipped it and basically put it on the Twitter, but me and Leslie both thought that Lewis Gibson was cup-tied. He was not indeed cup-tied. It was great to see him getting back onto the bench again. The reason for that is because seemingly with the League Cup and the Challenge Cup, the group stages are treated separately to the knockouts, so players can play for two separate clubs. So the more you know, but we obviously found that one out, and good to see. So Scott, going to the first half, there were a few Rovers chances, but generally the game was, early pace was set by Queen of the South. I don't think that's unfair to say in the slightest. Do you think that was by design on their part, where they deserve a bit of credit, or did Rovers really need to be doing more in terms of what they have with the ball and their sort of structure?
I think it's probably a bit of both. First of all, I was actually, especially in that first 5 minutes, it was a bit scrappy, but after that, I thought that Queen of the South actually played pretty well and looked a pretty decent side. And of course, when you're at the top end of League One, you're going to be an alright side. So I wasn't expecting a walkover or anything like that. But I think for them, they came out, they played their game. They were really a lot faster than us in terms of just 1-2s, getting in behind us, really causing bother down the sides, of both sides of us actually. And then they obviously had Guthrie up top, which was like their sort of focal point, or their version of what we should be getting out of Jack Hamilton, sort of somebody to aim at, somebody to get knockdowns to, and then he also had a couple of chances as well. But in terms of our side of things, I just thought we just looked so slow last night out the traps. It reminded me of how we started the derby. Like, I thought we started the derby really slow as well in that first half. And I get it's Tuesday night, it's freezing, there's no many folk there, and it probably is quite difficult to get yourself up for it. And I know that you get these times where players are like, oh, it always helps when the fans get behind us, and then the fans are like, aye, but you need to get going to get us going, sort of thing. So it's always a sort of to and throwing thing. But I just think last night there was just nothing to get behind at all for a large period, and even right up all the way till we actually got the goal. But I just thought that we were playing a lot. It looked like walking football at times when we had the ball, but when they had the ball, they were playing how I wanted us to play in terms of quick passing, movement. Everybody was just looked engaged, where we just looked as if like we're all right because it's 0-0 and we were kind of settling into the game, but we just lacked a lot of energy and sort of urgency about us in that first half. But that's how I saw it anyway. And I mean, from just listening, because you could hear pretty much every shout last night because there was less than 1,000 folk there. But like even folk just a couple of rows around you, like a lot of people were saying the same. It was kind of, come on, boys, let's wake up here. Because at the end of the day, it wouldn't have surprised me if they went at 2-0 ahead before we had scored. Like they'd hit the post. Ray made a good save. So like, I just think that we really needed to up our intensity. Was the main sort of thing coming out of that first half.
Yeah, and Alan, just with yourself, did you think there was one sort of problem area for the Rovers in terms of how they set up or the way that they were playing, which stood out for you? Or were you always quite confident that we would be able to craft opportunities? What were your sort of thoughts on the first half performance? Because it seems to be one that, looking across the board, if you look at the social media reaction, and everyone's obviously got their own viewpoints and opinions, but like with the first half, did a lot of comments about how turgid it was. What was your perspective on it, watching from your cosy wee boffy?
The biggest issue was an issue that we've had for a fair bit of the season, and it was kind of getting the ball into attacking areas. In terms of, we were fairly comfortable in possession at the back as we have been most of the season. We'll pass it around. There's normally a ball into the midfield, but it's that kind of next stage of kind of pushing up into the final third. There was just the amount of times Doherty or whoever was, we're having to turn back and pass in the way or pass back the way because there was nothing in front of them. There was no, don't get me wrong, that then leads to them almost not looking for the passes in front of them and passing sideways when there is one on because they're so used to not having anything there. But it just seemed to be really kind of, there wasn't an awful lot of movement up top, which is strange because we had decent attacking players up there, guys who you're expecting to be creating chances, and there was also a wee bit of I almost felt like there was something missing in that area as well. I love Scott Brown. I think he's a great player. He's been a great player for us for a number of years now and a good captain. He's not a number 10. He's not. And when you're playing a 4-2-3-1, your number 10 is a really, really important position in terms of kind of bringing people into the play, linking up the midfield in the attack and kind of creating all. And that's just no Scott Brown's role. It's just not what he does. He'll go out there and he'll try it. And I'm not putting the blame on him. I'm not even really necessarily putting the blame on Dougie Imrie for playing him in the wrong position or anything like that. It just didn't work. And without jumping ahead too much, fair play to Dougie Imrie, changed it and it made a difference. Albeit we still didn't score any more goals, but it certainly we looked more dangerous. And even with that, we still created a few fairly decent chances. It was just, you almost just feel like sometimes we just got no luck as well. I mean, the balls were just kind of skidding on and just out of the reach of players, or you hit the post, and it just kind of felt like one of those it's not going to be your night kind of nights, because just a combination of the players seemed a bit off it, but also just things weren't coming off.
Yeah, I fully agree with your point about like the positions in terms of where it was at. Now, I'm loath to obviously tell a professional football manager where things have gone right and wrong, because obviously, again,
the big caveat to that is I'm a complete jobber who knows nothing.
I think from a Fran's perspective, yeah, like Scott Brown, he's so good in terms of his energy and what he brings to the midfield and getting back and forward up and down the pitch. And I think that's probably, you kind of touched on that before when you were talking about like the personnel in terms of who we had in the midfield, because you bring in Jordan Doherty, who brings in those qualities, and we can all see what he adds in terms of his addition. But then you've got Inseo, who's performing really well at the moment, in my opinion, and then you've got the qualities that Scott Brown has. And I think like for me, it would have been one of those two that might have been sacrificed in terms of where you're bringing in. Maybe do you bring in a winger further up, and then for me, I would have played Easton centrally. Now that's been a controversial talking point within our group, shall we say? I get that not everyone.
I can hear Blair shaking his head from here,
and that's absolutely fine. That's absolutely fine. But I do think that there was. I mean, clearly in terms of the energy and the intensity, I think you're right to say that we were creating sort of half chances, but not as well as Queen of the South were doing. I do think that's a fair criticism and valid point to make.
Yeah, the big fella Guthrie was causing us all sorts of problems early on until we probably got a wee bit tired and we learned how to cope with him a bit better, I think. But early on he was... I wasn't expecting anything from him. I don't know much about him, and I remember... I think it was one of the Terrace podcasts or something when they were announcing his signing. Livy fans were just like, this guy is utterly garbage. So I was expecting nothing from him. But he actually looked fairly handy, I thought.
Yep, I think that's fair. Got to give him a degree of credit based on his performance last night, because he was... It's no mean feat to go up against Darragh O'Connor and Paul Hanlon, to say the least. We've seen better forwards do absolutely nothing against them earlier on this season. So, Scott, we'll talk about the penalty now. So it was a short throw from Ewan Wilson, shall we say, into Doherty, who then puts the ball into the box, and it's really all the defenders coming together with this one, because it's a Hanlon flick on where he sort of gets tangled up with a defender. Two of the defenders go for the ball, and then it's sort of the ball comes down in front of the keeper. Darragh O'Connor, of all people, is there to sort of try and take the ball away. What did you make of the penalty? Because I've seen some sort of criticism maybe from outsiders suggesting that it was soft. What was your perspective when you saw it initially and then seen it back on Raith TV?
The first point that I brought up when we were watching it live from the South Stand was that it was more just the fact that O'Connor's going away for goal, causing no problems. And you're like, why is the keeper even bothered come flying out for that? He clearly thought he could get to the ball, but it just seemed a bit sort of rash for him to even bother going in. I mean, put it this way, if you flipped it around, see if that was Josh Ray, I could tell you right now, everyone would have been going off their head for him going flying into that for no reason. Because as I say, Darragh O'Connor, it's not like he's flipped his body around and he's coming towards goal. He's going away from goal, and he'll end up going outside the box with his touch. So, like, he's not even causing any problems. So, but in terms of the contact, he does make contact with him, and whether O'Connor makes the most of it once he goes down, I mean, that's modern football for you, but I think it's more the fact that there is contact there. The goalie's made a silly error in coming for it, and O'Connor got in there first and made sure he got the touch in ahead of him to get the keeper to make contact with him. So I think it's smart for O'Connor, but I think it's just a bit dumb for the goalie, to be honest, more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's a fair summary of where it was at. I hate to use the phrase, but gave the referee a decision to make probably covers it, because he comes in so close to O'Connor, and just to then sort of almost clumsily, as you say, sort of just the way that he goes and tries to win it. And then he kind of just holds his hands up like, nah, I didn't do anything. And you're like, well, you've kind of got in with quite a fair bit of force there. I get that Queen's fans are those sort of looking on from a neutral point of view might sort of suggest it's soft, but I think for me, he went in and, as I say, made a bit of a meal of it in terms of where it was going, because as you rightfully point out, O'Connor's going away from goal. There's not really much danger, and I think if it was Josh Ray, now Josh Ray came in for quite a lot of flack before he signed from Rovers, maybe, well, certainly from St Johnstone fans, but also Airdrie fans suggesting that he was a bit of a rash keeper. So again, we've not really seen that, I feel. We've seen it in small doses, like pre-season against Falkirk, when he absolutely clattered Ethan Ross, but that was something that, again, it's good to see an opposition goalkeeper do, gifting away a penalty. So Dylan Easton rightfully dispatches that, gives us a lead. What was your sort of perspective at that point going into half time? I mean, Josh Ray still has a bit of work to do going into the first half, Allan, with a few saves. Do you think he's quietly flying under the radar in terms of the number of clean sheets that he's keeping and how well he's been performing so far for Rovers?
I think he is. I think genuinely, I think there are still some Rovers fans who are not convinced by him, which is mad. I'd love to, I've not done the stats. I'd love to see them, but I'd be surprised if we've had a Rovers goalie who's had this many clean sheets at this time of the season for a long time. It's a funny thing actually, because we have conceded quite a lot of goals. So the problem is when we concede one, we tend to concede more. But if we I think it's 11 clean sheets in the league, and there'll be a few in the cup as well. So for this time of season, it's great, and he just the defence just seems so confident in him. He's they look a lot calmer there. They're willing to pass it back to him. But yeah, the defence looks a lot more solid with Josh Ray there. We've seen, like you say, that maybe one example of him being a little bit rash. We could probably all quite easily think of examples where Kev Dabrowski was more so. There was one in particular I remember where he miscontrolled it and then went absolutely flying into this, properly dived. So you just feel more confident with Josh Ray in there, and I think he actually, more often than not, when he gets a clean sheet, he doesn't have that much to do because as a defensive unit, they're pretty solid. Whereas last night, he actually made a few pretty decent saves as well. So I think he's been a really good signing. I'm really chuffed with it. I think we'd be in a far worse position than we are if we didn't have him.
Yeah. I think that's a fair summary. And it was good to see him getting credit, because sometimes I see some of the sort of criticism labelled at him as, but has he made any good saves yet? And that last night, the one where he's tipped it onto the post, that's a proper... You've got to sort of tip your cap to that and sort of say, look, you can't really deny that one. That's one where he's done very well to get down to it and be able to get it clear.
So I saw somebody describe it as McGurn-esque, and I think that's
the highest of praise within the Rovers support, if you're getting called McGurn-esque.
The only thing with Josh Ray that potentially I would say that he needs to maybe work on is the one thing I think he's similar to Kev is he's a bit indecisive whether he comes for a ball or no. I mean, their first chance last night, that came for, he thought about coming for it and then he went, oh no, actually I'm not going to get to it, and he went back the way, and I think the defenders even thought, oh, is he coming or no? And that allowed Guthrie to get his chance away. But thankfully he saved it, or it hit the post as well. But I think other than that, I think he potentially, you could say maybe Kev was a better shot stopper. But I think the defence have so much confidence now behind him, because he's so much more calmer. He seems to have better communication with his back line. And I think, in terms of just kicking the ball, and he doesn't flap at a lot of stuff, which was always something that everybody was a bit nervous about when the ball got rolled back to Kev. Everyone was like, oh dear. But not once have I ever worried about that with Josh, because he seems to be a pretty decent kicker of the ball, but also just he gives you that calmness that I think that we've been needing in Hanlon, or whoever it is in the back line, Hanlon, O'Connor, Doherty, Fordyce, whoever's been playing centre half. They've had a very good connection and communication. You can hear them, especially in a game like last night. You can hear them talking to each other and what the shouts are. And Jay Rowe, to be fair, came in, and also you can hear him sort of shouting to the keeper, or he's getting a shout for Ray to say whether to leave it or to clear it or whatever. So I think that's something that Kev probably wasn't so good at, was his communication to his back line, and that's where you're leading the sort of confidence with the two of them together to get this, because it's a team effort to get a clean sheet. It's not just whether he makes saves or whether they stop sort of clearing shots and blocking shots so he's got nothing to do. the two of them have to work if we're going to keep more clean sheets going forward.
Yeah, with J Rowe, just to come back to him there, I didn't have this in my notes, but I think you're absolutely right to give him a degree of credit for his performance as well last night, because right in the first half, he's got that sort of interception where he gets in and clears the ball after Josh Reid palmed it out. And then on top of that, he did have a few opportunities and with sort of shots, half shots, headers at set piece. Great to see how he's performing under Imrie. I know me and Leslie spoke about it in the sort of pre-match podcast, but it's been a real sort of redemption arc to sort of see him sort of keep the head. He's kept his head down. He's been left at the team for a fair degree, but now that Dougie Imrie's back and he has came in taking the reins, J Rose came in and he's looked really, really positive in terms of the performances that he's putting into the team. So that's been great to see. It's far more like the player that I think that we were expecting that we were getting in the summer.
It may even prove to be the best thing we get from the Challenge Cup this season. You know, he got brought back in for that Hamilton game, come in, scored a hat-trick, and he has not looked back since then. Yeah. He's been like a different player.
No, it's fantastic to see.
Fair play to him for the effort and you know, kind of showing us what he's capable of. And also fair play to Dougie Imrie for, you know, sticking with him and saying, right, you've earned your chance. We're going to keep going with you. So.
I think that's an important bit to remember. It's sort of, again, I'm not going to speak for everyone, but certainly for me, I mean, I suppose we all get guilty at points of criticising players and you think, oh, this player's no good, and then you can kind of write them off. Now, I'm not necessarily saying that I've done that myself with J Rowe, but it does show, like, sometimes it just needs a wee tweak in terms of the circumstances, and players can come in. I know that we've seen that previously with the likes of Rory McEwen, as the example I always go to, where he looked completely out of sorts, but then when you take Ross Perry out of the equation, then he improved substantially. Moving on though, the game really hinged in terms of certainly the performance from a Rovers perspective, because on the 63rd minute, Scott, the scoreline stayed the same, but we made a quadruple sub with Josh Mullin coming on to replace Scott Brown, Paul McMillan for Dylan Easton, Richard Chin for Jack Hamilton, and Lewis Gibson coming on to replace Andy Winter. Was that a real statement of intent for you that Dougie Imrie wasn't sort of resting on his laurels, going to sit there, take the 1-0? He was willing to sort of use this as an opportunity to bring on the fresh legs. And were you quite surprised by the aggression of the substitutes?
I think it was absolutely needed. I think more than anything, I was actually a little bit surprised there wasn't even maybe one or two at half-time changed. I mean, I know we went in 1-0 up. Remarkably, we went in with a lead, but I think it was more the fact that, as I said earlier, the intensity and everything, it was so slow in the first half. So I thought Imrie maybe at half-time will go, right, Kim, I'm going to bring on maybe a Chin or Gibson or Montague or whatever at half-time, maybe just inject a little bit of pace, a little bit more creativity at the top of the park. But he decided to obviously keep it as it was until the hour mark, as you say. But no, the four of them done exactly what we needed them to do, and they did it to a T. The only thing that didn't happen was that they didn't get any goals, which was unlucky because they created plenty of chances, but sadly none of them went in. I just think that whether the discussion that ended up being sort of walking back to the car last night was like, so do you start any of these lads on Saturday? Because they've all given Imrie a bit of a headache, right, what do I do now going forward? Because Jack Hamilton's had numerous chances now at the top of the park, and I know he's been in for a lot of stick, and he's had his odd decent game, and he's got one or two goals in that time, but it never seems to be consistent with him, and that's the big issue that we've got right now, is we need somebody at the top of the park that's going to create chances and finish chances. Now, I know Chin missed a few chances last night, but he also created so much just off his own sort of intensity, his running power. He was running beyond the defenders every time. And, I mean, that was something that I was expecting actually more out of Andy Winter in the first half. I thought he would be the one that would be going, right, Ken, well, I'm going to make the run beyond and try and force sort of a ball clipped over the top. I think I saw it once in the first half, and then, yeah, when these four came on, I think it was nearly almost every attack was either Chin or Gibson was running on and Doherty or Ince or whoever was then clipping a ball through or over the top, and they were straight onto it every single time. And then Queen of the South, I mean, they didn't have much subs to make themselves. You could see them tiring, and these four lads were just loving the fact that their backline was really tiring. And yeah, I think it was the correct thing to do by Imrie, and I felt sorry for them that they didn't get their goal, because they certainly created enough to deserve at least a goal out of that sort of half an hour that they were on the park.
Yeah, Alan, there was certainly in terms of the positional choices for the players that did come on. What did you make of where they were playing? Because you saw Richard Ching go on sort of looking out and out forward. McMullen was behind him, so he looked a lot more centrally than you would maybe expect Paul McMullen to be, at least initially. And then you had, of course, Gibson and Mullen out wide. What did you make of that?
I thought it worked really well. I think Chin and McMullen both did really well when they came on. And what they gave you is they gave you pace and just directness, and the panic that you could see in the Queen's defenders. Just, defenders at that level, especially when they've already played an hour in a freezing cold, they don't like guys that run right at them and who actually are in control of the ball and in control of what they're doing. It's so hard to defend against. And Chin in particular, he absolutely terrorised them, and he's still. I don't think he's even like 100% yet. I did notice when Gordon was interviewing the mascots before the game that when they were asking who the favourite player were, it's normally every week it's always you just get loads of Dylan Eastons. So a few more Richard Chins coming through now, and I think that's going to keep increasing because he is. He's one. You worry that the longer a player's not available, the better he gets in your head, and the reality is maybe not actually the same. I think he is every bit as good as we all kind of hoped he was going to be when he was coming back. He looks so hard to defend against, and he played some really nice balls in. He looked, he had that wee back heel effect that you're probably going to talk about some. The other one is he played a wee ball into McMullen, and it was just kind of chipped over the top, and it was just perfectly controlled. He seems to have everything in his locker, and I think he really enjoyed having McMullen there with him. And it's not even like the Queen of South defenders could say, right, well, if we push the ball out wide, we're going to get it any easier, because Gibson was running at them and kind of linking up really well down there. Mullen's not got the pace, but what you have then got is Gibson and Mullen both have a really, really good delivery.
Yeah.
So you're either getting really good crosses coming in, or you've got these two quick guys just running at you. And it was I think in the end, the Queen of the South defenders were just actually quite glad to hear the final whistle.
I mean, do you think that we should be taking a leaf out of Queen of the South's book in terms of the way that they've set up, in the sense of they've got Guthrie as a focal point up the top? And I know that we've done that with Jack Hamilton before, but they're trying to utilise being able to get these balls in, particularly from out wide, and being able to use that sort of as a strength. I mean, is that something that we could take a leaf out of their book from, or do you think that the focus should be about sort of, right, we need to look down a different avenue, potentially maybe Andy Winter as a number 9, or whether we're trying Chin as an out-and-out forward?
But there's options there. I mean, ultimately, if you're the number 9 and you're up there on your own, you need to be chipping in with goals, and you need to be holding, you need to be bringing others into play. And I thought at times last night, Hamilton did half of that really well, in terms of he was getting, the two big centre halves for Queen of South were massive, and he was still getting up there, and he was winning header. He wins more than his fair share of headers in most games. But whereas there was one example in particular where Guthrie won a really good header, and he actually played it into the channel for, I think it was Liam Smith that was on the left wing for them, and he played him right in, and it created a chance. Whereas when Hamilton's winning headers, there's nobody there, it's not going to anyone, and that's not necessarily his fault. So you wonder if maybe actually having Winter up there with him, or Chin up there with him, we might actually get a bit of joy out of some of these kind of flick-ons that Hamilton gets.
Yeah, I'd be keen to see what we do going forward. I know that we're going to talk about the Arbroath game in a minute, and sort of go into sort of like what the options are there. But yeah, Scott, what about the chances that we did create? I mean, Paul McMullen, desperately unlucky to see that one crash off the post. Were you willing that one in? Because again, it'd be great to see him get off the mark for his goals. You can tell that he's itching to do it, and you could feel the frustration that one didn't nestle into the top corner.
I must say, for that effort when it hit the post, it's probably actually the only shot that I thought was a decent shot by Paul McMullen that he's had this season. It was the only one where he's curled it and done everything right that you need him to do, and he's just unlucky that it's came back off the post. And then, God, Ewan Wilson must have been lying down how far he's stuck that over the bar, because he was leaning back so much, and it was just such a defender's finish, unfortunately. But I think I said after the Dunfermline game, after they missed that sort of chance in the start of the second half, that I've kind of resigned myself to Paul McMullen's probably not going to score this season. Just the amount of chances he's missed and the fact that he's not a great striker of the ball. But it would have been great for his confidence, but also just good to see him finally get off the mark. Had that gone in last night, I do think that he, in the last few games, he's done enough in terms of linking up with players, getting in behind, causing bother for sort of defences. So he's doing everything else good that we need him to be doing, but we do need him to start. If to be fair, if anybody could start chipping in with some goals, it'd be great. But for him especially, he's the one that tends to start a lot of games and is up nearest the striker a lot of the time. So we do kind of need him to be chipping in between now and the end of the season if we've got a chance of sort of scoring more goals, creating more chances, these sort of things. So it was unlucky. He, as I say, he did everything right in that chance, but it just if it had gone maybe an inch or two slightly more off the inside of the post, then it's probably gone in. So just hard luck for him.
Yeah, and Alan, you've rightfully mentioned Richard Chin's the deftest of flicks, shall we say. A great word to use for it, a deft flick. And then on top of that, you've got Paul Hanlon, a chance at the back post. You did touch on the sort of Richard Chin flick through that Paul McMullen tried to run onto, and then the Queen of the South defender maybe going a bit Thierry Henry against Ireland all those years ago. What did you make of that? Was that a potential second penalty claim there for you, or were you?
I was shouting for it at the time, and then watching it on the highlights, watching it back. I mean, it's handball, and as far as I can see, it's there's a hint of deliberateness about it. It looks in terms of it was a deliberate action, and it hit. Yeah, well, I don't think he's said, right, I'm going to catch the ball and knock it away, but it just looked like it was just an instinct. It was like, oh crap, he's through here, right? I'm not convinced it was in the box though. I've only watched the highlights back once, and it looks very, very close to. Like, don't get me wrong, that's not why the ref's not giving it. The ref's not giving it because there was a player in the way and he's not seen it. I'm guessing I don't know how the railway stand linesman's not seen it, because I think he potentially had a better view of it. But yeah, I would need to watch the replay again a couple of times to confirm that. I don't know if it's definitely in the box. If it is, it's a penalty. Like, there's no getting away from it. But yeah, we're not having much luck with penalties for handballs in the last couple of weeks.
And then the game rounds off with Queen of the South sort of ramping up the pressure the final few minutes. Scott, Guthrie with a header that's maybe could have potentially done better with. But again, do you think that just comes down to tiredness that Queen of the South, they're really lacking in their bodies? I think that's something that's been touched upon sort of numerous times by both their own fans and their own sort of officials. I was reading on Pine Bovril that they might have had some younger lads potentially on the bench were it not for school prelims, and I'm saying that in complete seriousness. Some of the younger lads that they've got, I think, that are like 16 or 17, which, to be fair, credit to them, because again, blooding through young players, I think Queen of the South are really good at doing that in terms of players in the local area. But yeah, do you think that was just one where ran out of steam towards the end.
Definitely. I think basically for 70 minutes on, you could tell. Like, I was surprised, like the two lads that they did bring off the bench eventually, I was surprised that they actually waited so long to bring the two of them on. Whether it was because I don't really know the two lads that came on, if they're really young lads that haven't played much football and they were still in the game at 1-0, so maybe Murphy was like, well, I need to keep as good a team as I can on the park and couldn't change too much, I don't know, but and yeah, they missed that big header at the end, which you really need, at least should be hitting the target for it, because it was pretty much a free header that he got there. Luckily for us, it went over the bar. But yeah, I didn't realise that they were so short on bodies, to be honest, going into the game. But and it didn't help them that one of their sort of more experienced lads ended up getting injured in the warm up. So
yeah,
it was
which I had no idea about. I had no idea. John Greer sent me a message like, "Do you know that Lyon's no playing?" I was like, "What? No."
Well,
I looked on Queen of the South's Twitter, and they hadn't tweeted anything about it yet. I was like, "Oh, right." So I was wanting to kind of look on the pitch and try and find what number wasn't he on, and then it was number 16. I think it was. There was the guy that had come on for him.
I also, until you said it over the mic, nobody else probably knew either. So it was just a case of, because when the lineups came out, you seen that they only had 3 outfield subs, and then as soon as you mentioned that, I went, Christ, they're down to 2. So it's they were down to slim pickings, right enough. But so there's a team that seems to have less players to choose from than us right now. But I think for us though, I said it last night at the end, I think also in our group chat, it was job done. We got through. It wasn't pretty at times, as I say. The first hour especially, I was kind of pretty frustrated with how we had played, but I thought the 4 boys, well, the 5, Montague as well when he came on, I thought they'd done exactly what you need your subs to do, and they made an impact. As I say, they didn't score, but they'd done the job that they were asked to do, which was change the game and bring sort of intensity into the game, because I think Imrie even said it as well post-match, that he thought that there was a bit of it was a bit lackadaisical for our team at times. We just looked like we expected things to happen for us. Like things were just going to happen. But Queen of the South, we're never just going to roll over. So, just glad that we did manage to get through. And we'll see who we get. We'll probably end up with somebody like Airdrie or something. So, it'll be interesting. But I would imagine it's mostly going to be now Championship sides left in it after all the ties that are still to come, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think, did I hear the draws next Thursday or something?
Thursday. They're doing the quarters and the semis next Thursday.
I mean, that's the thing. I've only just checking now is to see you've got Queen's Park, Forfar, Stirling, Stenhousemuir, Partick Inverness, Ayr Stranraer, Arbroath, East Fife, and County St Johnstone. So a real sort of mix of teams in there. You would imagine all the Championship teams will sort of, and Inverness, of course, fancy themselves with a degree of confidence going in towards it. I thought that Dougie Imrie's post-match interview really wasn't pulling any punches, so to speak, just talking about how we caused our own problems, mentioning things like complacency and being a bit lacklustre. Alan, what did you make about this comment that sort of we were taking too many touches? Do you think that's one that will sort of resonate popularly across the Rovers support? Because I think it is something that maybe our support have touched upon. There's been a general consensus there.
But before I go on that, actually, I was just going to touch on something Scott said, and it was actually just to single out Kai Montague. I thought he was brilliant when he came on.
Yeah.
I thought he had and I also thought it was telling that he came on with about 15-20 minutes to go, and it was only 1-0, which shows a real level of trust in him, I think, from Dougie Imrie to send him on with that. The game's still pretty much in the balance, and with that amount of time, and I thought he did really well. I thought he added a bit of kind of urgency into the attacking moves, so fair play to him. In terms of the comments for Dougie Imrie, I once again I watched that Dougie Imrie post match and think, this guy's actually watched the same match as me. It's great. Whoa. No mention of penalty box entries or anything like that. He comes out, he summarises the game in a way not only that allows you to relate because it sounds like the same game you've watched, but you understand what he's saying.
Yeah.
I find far too many manager interviews now, they're using all these buzzwords that they're getting taught in their FIFA Pro license training courses that none of us are going on. So we're all just like, what are you talking about? Just describe what you've seen on the pitch. And Dougie, you'll occasionally throw in like transition and stuff like that, and he will use some of these words, but he does it in a way that you actually understand what he's talking about. And I know it was far too easy to kind of jump on back on the slag off Barry Robson bandwagon on this podcast, but half the time I didn't know what he was talking about. And it didn't sound like he'd watched the same game. Whereas with Imrie, you do genuinely feel it, and I totally agree with his point that I think it's something that Rovers fans have had a bit of frustration with, not just under Imrie, not under Robson, but for probably a few years now, where it's like, just shoot. Seriously, just have a ping. And I think we're probably doing it now more than we did early on in the season. But there are sometimes still where it's just like, you don't need to take that extra touch. You don't need to cut inside the guy again. There's a ball down the channel. Play it. Play the guy in. Get early crosses in. Don't give the defence time to settle. And again, this is all with the caveat that, all of these guys are far, far, far better footballers than I could ever dream of being, and they know the game a lot better than I do. But, everyone's saying the same thing. And you know what? They know the game better than all of us do. That's fair enough. But it's good to see the manager coming out and saying the same thing. And, he's the guy that can actually go and do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing about like going back to the statistics and stuff is like, you kind of touched on it there. You don't feel like patronised, because that was the thing with that. I know, because it then does turn into a sort of meme when people talk about it, and it becomes like a rod to hit your manager with when they come out and they're like, well, we had X number of penalty box entries. As soon as he says that, everyone's like, that we've lost the game. I said it at the time, but no manager that goes out and wins a game is talking about how many penalty box entries that they had, because it's basically being used as a justification for not winning a game. I think he's exceptionally pragmatic in what he says, and he's just got a way about him that, like, once you've, again, obviously I've been very dismissive in terms of like his first few seasons when he was at Morton, quite openly about that, but I think that he's evolved as a manager, to say the least, and that I don't think you realise how good he is in terms of what he's doing and the approach that he's taken, and it's just the way that he can, how switched on he is about little things, and about like not wanting to give too much information away, maybe pre-match, and then post-match he elaborates on stuff a bit more to sort of say, this is the reason why we did it. So yeah, I can understand why people are thoroughly impressed, because I'm right in the same camp. Right, let's talk about the Arbroath game that's coming up this Saturday at Starks Park. So they lost last weekend, Scott, to St Johnstone, but prior to that they'd been 8 games unbeaten before, and currently their away form sitting at played 11, won 4, drawn 2, lost 5. Arbroath still continuing that impressive form that's keeping them up the right end of the league. David Gold's been linked to, aside from ourselves, in the Daily Record. When Dougie Imrie was sort of announced, it was basically put out at the same time that David Gold had interviewed for the job with us. Also been heavily linked to the Ross County job prior to Stuart Kettlewell getting that. Do you think it's one where it's really sort of seen them reap the rewards of the sort of how well they've done with Arbroath and setting them up?
I think Gold and Hamilton have done a really good job so far. I mean, the fact that he's even been linked to a job like Ross County, I think, is kind of hats off to him, because with these sort of co-managers or really young sort of player-coach managers, you wonder how it's going to go, because you feel like it's either one or the other. It tends to either go horribly wrong or it goes really well. It doesn't just kind of go along all right sort of thing. So, no, fair play that they've been able to get ticking along. They got promoted last year. I must admit, I don't think I'm alone, but I didn't think they would struggle, but I didn't see them even sort of getting anywhere near the top half of the table. I thought they might be sort of around 8th position. I thought they had a solid enough squad coming into the league that they would be good enough to finish above maybe like a Queen's Park or something. when before a ball was kicked, but they seem to be just another one of these League One teams that's came up with a lot of confidence. They've recruited smartly. They've brought in some young players that are clearly hungry to do well. I mean, the boy that they've got on loan for Aberdeen seems to have really played well this season. I think it's Finlay Marshall, boy in midfield. Yeah. He's certainly one that has caught the eye in terms of when we've played against them, but also just you see him coming sort of every couple of weeks with a goal or an assist or whatever. So I think whether Aberdeen are going to look to keep him beyond this season, I don't know. Or if not, I'd imagine there'll be championship sides looking after him all in the summer, basically. But in terms of the weekend coming up, I think I'm glad it's kind of a home game because I know what it's like at this time of year up at Gayfield. It can be pretty... It's very likely going to be a windy, cold, potentially rainy day, and you're like, well, this isn't going to... It doesn't sound great or appealing to anybody, but I think us at home, on our own surface, I would like to think that we've got enough about us to give them a few problems, but at the same time, we know it's going to be a difficult game. They've shown week on week that they're the real deal this season because they've not fallen away yet. They've been there basically since very early in the season. They've been competing at the top end of the league, and from what I heard, anyway, I didn't see any highlights or anything. They actually gave St Johnstone a pretty good game last week, and St Johnstone just were able to nick that goal and get the win. So, yeah, I fully expect a tough game. Whether, as I say, I mentioned it kind of when we were discussing the Queen of the South game. I would potentially actually look at maybe bringing Hamilton out of this game, just try something different, because I feel like we've been kind of hammering the same door every time. Right, well, Jack Hamilton technically was the only the only striker available to us because Callum Smith was injured, Vaughan's been injured. We've been really struggling that, and Josh Gentles wasn't really offering anything either when he got any chance at all. I think Richard Chin did enough last night to show me that he's going to have more chance to cause bother for them. And if anything, when you look at their centre-half pairing, Tam O'Brien and Aaron Muirhead, they're basically the other pairing compared to like O'Reilly and Ashcroft at Partick, who will love a ball punted up to them because they will live for heading the ball basically. Whereas I don't think either of them two will fancy Richard Chin constantly running at them and just balls in behind them that they're having to constantly turn and run after a ball. So I'd be interested to see if we can potentially look at Chin and maybe even a McMullen as well, near the sort of in and around them to just cause a little bit of problem in terms of pace behind.
Yeah, I mein, we've certainly got no indication as to the direction that will go. I think that Dougie Imrie's been probably provided quite a lot of food for thought going in with how we finished yesterday, admittedly, against a depleted Queen of the South team. I think you're right to call out in terms of their squad because they've had Taylor Stephen come in as well. He's performed really well, but he's at the point where St Johnstone now need to think about, like, do we pull him back for the rest of the season? So that might be one to keep an eye on over the next few weeks because it's been the foundation of sort of David Golden and Colin Hamilton's reign as sort of co-managers against, as Arbroath co-managers even, where they've built a side. Really, they've had a strong core, but on top of that, they've brought in some really, really strong loanees over the last couple of seasons and been able to sort of basically facilitate their team using them. So see how things progress and how things are moving along. Alan, we obviously beat Arbroath last time around. That Starks 3-0. Again, Jack Hamilton and Richard Chin both got on the score sheet there. Is that something that we could take a degree of confidence in, or do you think it's too far back in the past now to really be worrying about a game like that?
Under a different manager as well. In fact, we've not played them under Imrie yet at all. So I mean, they've not scored against us, so you can take something from that. But I think that first game's a perfect example of what we've been saying all season. That first goal is really important, and that if we get it, you're pretty confident we can go on and close the game out. We don't know how we'd react to going behind to Arbroath this season because, as I say, they've not scored against us yet. But I think, they can take a lot from that. They can take the fact that they know that we can get in behind them and we can hurt them. And if we get one and maybe make them come out a bit more, then we can get a bit more room. And we've got enough guys up top with a bit of pace about them, as Scott said, that we can certainly create some chances. I totally agree with Scott as well in terms of the absolute worst tactic you could deploy against Arbroath is just to shell it long, because, as he says, these guys will just header it all day. That's basically what they do. They've got more about them, obviously, but in terms of if you're going to throw long balls up at them all day, they're going to absolutely love that.
Yeah, and I think we saw enough yesterday to sort of. This is a classic Blair phrase, but if we don't have any idea where we're going with this in terms of who's coming in, Arbroath, they could be open for anything. We could see a real mix-up where we see sort of how the team finished yesterday evening. That lineup, it might be that we tweak it so that we keep Hamilton up front, we play wide players out and rotate whoever. Again, could potentially bring in Dylan Easton centrally. It's all up for grabs. And that's the great thing about it. We've got no clue as to the direction that it's going to go, which means that in turn they're going to be exactly the same, hopefully. Have either of you want to take a guess at the lineup that you would go with? I've not prepared one myself, but if either of you have, more than happy to listen for that.
I've not prepared one, but just off the top of my head, I think I would still, as long as Hanlon came out last night, not picking up anything further than, because obviously it was a bit surprising to actually see him play last night. I'm not going to lie, I thought we might see him on the bench potentially, but I didn't expect to see him starting. But in terms of the 11, I'd probably have obviously Ray in goals, back four. I'd probably just go with the same back four, to be honest. We can't really do too much. Obviously, Stevenson's still out injured, and I would like to keep Doherty in the midfield, so I'd just go with the same back four again. And then I would probably play Doherty and Brown in the sort of two, at the sort of base of midfield. I'd then push up Incio and ask him to do the more sort of running and sort of attacking role, almost in a 10 sort of position, with Easton out on the left, McMullen on the right, and I would go Chin up top. I mean, It's midgets up front basically, but at the end of the day, as I've just said, I would rather that we're actually playing the ball in the deck, and if anything, if we are going to put it long, you're going beyond the defence and allowing our three to then run in behind and run onto it. So I do think that we need to start playing with a lot more sort of pace and zip about us, because I think we have been quite stop-start. We seem to take a while to decide what we're going to do with the ball, which makes you more predictable. And I tell you something, Arbroath are one of these sides that are very organised, that they'll be happy to let you have the ball in your own half. But see, once you enter their half, that's when they'll engage you. So that's when we need to have ideas of what we're going to do to cut them open, because they'll be quite happy, I would imagine, coming and getting a point on Saturday, because they'll still find it a tough place to come. And they've struggled to get a result against us this season. So that's why I think they'll probably be set up, whether it's a 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1, I don't know, but I'm pretty certain they'll pack the midfield to make sure it's difficult for us to play through when we've got players like Easton, Chin, McMullen, all these players that are very technical players, but I do think they'll be hoping we are playing Jack Hamilton and then go, oh, we're not getting any success here, so we're just going to punt it up to Jack, and then the two centre-halves are going to go, right, thanks.
Yeah, I mean, they've got Arbroath in terms of their team. It's quite easy to forget about the players that they do actually have on their books. I mean, they can really mix it up in terms of who's going to be available. The likes of Scotty Stewart, or whether they're bringing in Nikolai Todorov as well, because he's still there. So it could be really anything on their side as well. I think for me, I would I'm a big proponent of Dylan Easton centrally. I think that he'd be able to sort of have things ticking up there and being able to have him as a number 10. And then I'd be quite keen to see us utilise the sort of wider players that we've got, because I think it's easy to forget, but almost is like having a new signing in terms of bringing back Gibble. You've got Richard Chin coming back to full fitness as well, so it feels like the width that we can play with is exponentially sort of stronger compared to before. I know that we've had Paul McMullen before, but even on the other side, like, we were quite limited as to what options we had available. Alan, have you got any thoughts sort of going into this one on the lineup, or what you would do in that sense?
It'd be broadly similar. In terms, the only change I would be as I'd actually have kind of Chin dropping back into the kind of 10 position instead of Enzio. Really harsh, because I think he's been playing really, really well recently. And I would have Winter up front with him. I kind of feel like he's. I don't think we've seen the best in him from the games so far out in that wide position. I think I'd like to see him kind of through centrally, and I think with Chin up there with him, I think it could be really interesting. I was kind of unsure about whether I'd start McMullen or I'd go with Josh Mullen. The reason I'd potentially go Mullen is the deliveries, but then you've not got anyone there ahead of him, other than obviously if it's from set pieces, of course. But the other thing is it'd be quite nice to have both McMullen and Gibson to come off the bench and kind of put maybe pace on both sides against Tyrant defenders. But then part of me thinks, like, it might be too late, so let's just absolutely batter them with pace from the start, and that's why I'd probably go for McMullen over Mullen.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned with the way that Arbroath as well have their lineup, it's mentioning Winter there. Bear in mind he spent time there last season, so he trained with them. He's going to know what they're all about, so it might be something that we choose to utilise on that front. But again, usually we'll do our standard thing, which is it hits 2:00 on a Saturday and we're all trying to figure out who's going to play where and frantically what formation we're going to.
Gibson's playing left back or something like that.
But yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, and we'll talk about it on a post-match podcast. Right, I've done a Should McStay or Should Dargo, because I'm not letting these away that easily. So I've got 6 clues about a former or current Rovers player for you to rack your brains about. If you just give me a moment, I'm just going to short down the. Right, clue number 1. I am an ex-Scotland under-21 player.
Okay.
Any opening bids?
Craig McEwen.
Who will I go for? Fancy going somebody just completely rogue for some reason, but Scott Crabbe.
Scott Crabbe. Clue number 2. I am a midfielder.
So not Craig McEwen.
Determined Scott Crabbe as a midfielder?
I always classed him as a forward, but I was pretty young.
My memory I'm playing for him is scoring an absolute beauty, a free kick and an absolute pumping Falkirk, which is always a good memory. And then Alec Totten came out and said that they were a better team. I think we beat them 5-2, and he claimed they were the better team. All right, Alec. Midfielder ex-Scotland. 21.
He'd love a chat about penalty box entries, eh?
I can't mind if we've had him before, and also whether he actually was ever capped at youth level, just because he's a midfielder. Liam Fox.
Alan, you got any?
I think we might have had him. I think he might have played on Stephen Simmons.
Stephen Simmons. Clue number 3. I made my professional debut in a game featuring 2 current Rovers players and 2 former Rovers players.
So you didn't say whether he was teammates or if it was just they 4 were in that game.
3 of them were teammates, and one of those 3 didn't feature in the game, was just on the bench. And one of them was on the opposite team.
I know we've tried to not really speak about him since he's left the club, but Sam Stanton.
Who?
He's not quite that.
I guess
he's...
It could be a good shout because
My only thinking is just
playing when he made his pro
Stevenson.
debut. Yeah. Because Stanton, he scored actually against us in that Scottish Cup game, didn't he? The Grant Anderson one.
He did.
And I'm trying to think of our team who would be around still. Well, Matthews, I don't know, might have been on the bench. Because it was. I'm sure Moon played that day in midfield, so I don't think Matthews would have been at starting.
I think it would exponentially put up the number of former Rovers.
Oh, if that was his debut, obviously, but that might not.
So just to recap the clues, an ex-Scotland under-21s player that's a midfielder, and they made their professional debut in a game featuring 2 current Rovers and 2 former Rovers. Three of those Rovers were in the match squad for one team, 1 was on the other side.
Nah,
and you're not being cheeky in terms of this player we're trying to guess who it is an ex-Rovers player in that clue.
No.
No, I've got no nothing to change my mind. I don't think it is Simmons, but I've not got another guess.
Clue number 4. I made 7 appearances for the Rovers in a loan spell.
Okay.
Here we go.
I straight away I'm thinking back to all these Hearts boys.
Oh, Jason Holt.
Jason Holt.
Fun enough, just came into my head was either him or was it David Smith? But I've got a feeling, did we not sign him permanently at one point?
We did.
I just think Holt might have made his debut. I've been fairly bold making his debut in an Edinburgh derby, but you never know.
My only worry with Holt when it came out of my head was did he play more than 7 times? But that was the only thing that could stopping it for me.
That's what stopped me going. I was leaning towards Jamie Walker, but I thought he almost
But
certainly
I am
played more
certain
than
Holt
17.
played underage for Scotland. It's I know it's not Stanton now, obviously. But it's I don't really have a better guess. I don't think than Jason Holt, to be honest.
Right, I'm going to give a real curveball clue for clue 5. Might tip you towards it. My surname is an attribute on Football Manager.
That should be. I don't know. I think is there somebody called Dennis All Out Attack Prachenko?
Jimmy Attitude. Don't actually know what attitude is. I've not played much Football Manager.
Jamie, throw a water bottle, Walker.
Oh dear.
There'll be some, though. I'm sure there'll be plenty of people that play FM more than I do anyway that will be screaming out who this is. But
Prove that you just abandon all the other clues and start going speed. No, shoot, no. To be fair, you often talk about them having a Holt level of 5.
So just to recap the clues. An ex-Scotland under-21 player who was a midfielder. They made their professional debut in a game featuring 4 current and former Rovers players, 3 of which were in their squad, and 1 was on the opposing team. They played 7 appearances for the Rovers on a loan spell, and their surname is an attribute on Football Manager.
I'd forgotten about the 3 being on their team thing, and that kind of rules out some of my logic on Holt anyway, but clearly it's not him then.
Would you like a clue 6?
Yes, please.
The bulk of my career has been spent playing in the city of Edinburgh for 2 teams. 1 is in the top flight, and 1 is a lower league team. I might need to add an extra clues to.
I don't know why we're not getting this.
I feel like the Football Manager one should make it obvious, but it's just I can't think of what the attributes might be in players who have had
completely forgetting clue 2 of being a midfielder, and again he definitely played more than 7 games. I almost just blurted out Callum Booth for some reason, but because he's been at Spartans in the lower leagues recently.
Not Callum Booth.
And he played a lot of games.
Yeah,
and he played a lot of games at St Johnstone as well.
Do you want the clues fleshed out?
We might need them.
We've got to play
I think it should be obvious.
You're going to need to hang them up somewhere and strike the letters.
So the professional debut was in a game. The 4 current and former Rovers, Hanlon, Stevenson, Martin Scott, Jamie Langfield. Langfield was playing for Aberdeen at the time, and the three, as you guess.
So he's a Hibs boy. Somebody that plays for Hibs.
Their loan spell saw them relegated with the Rovers under John Hughes.
I've tried to forget that team.
And the Football Manager attribute ties into goalkeepers.
That's ridiculous.
Oh,
Someone's got this out there, by the way, I hope.
Unless
I've
absolutely.
defeated everyone.
Yes, I feel we might take a bit of stick for this one, but
to be fair, it's nice and easy when you're listening at home, but
yeah. To be fair, we're going to get slagged off for weirdness saying hoodie anyway, so we might.
That's true.
Has to be a Hibs boy we've had on loan.
Yeah.
Unless, would that work? Could it be technically an Aberdeen boy that played against Hanlon and Stevenson on his debut?
It's a Hibs player.
He
Right.
said that 3 of them were on his team.
Aye.
Oh, actually, you said that he's been in Edinburgh, actually. Aye, he's cleared.
Aye.
Right. Hookie Yanks played for Spartans. Because I can't... Unless...
Or Edinburgh
Oh,
City.
wait. It's Danny Hanlon.
There we go. Jeez, we got there in the end, lads. We got there in the end.
It was just when I then turned to Edinburgh City and went, oh, aye, Hanlon's been at Edinburgh City for a bit.
It's funny because it's so easy to get invested in an idea, and then you'll have an idea. I know that we've done this like 100 episodes or so for doing Should McStay or Should Dargo, but you literally get so invested in an idea that like when you have something that comes up that disproves it, you're like, oh, like you're so against it because you're so attached to the idea that you might have it, and then you just draw a blank on John Hughes loanees from when you were there. But yeah,
And to be fair, I must say, it was not very memorable, so it was quite easy to forget him.
Yeah,
although when you think his name,
that was just
think his name.
That was just after my kids were born, so
quite an easy attribute to think of as well. When you think
not
his
unless you
name,
mention goalkeepers, because you're thinking like acceleration and Stevie acceleration. That'll be the
no. But that was just about the time I was first had the kids, so I wasn't actually coming. So I genuinely, you could have kept going all day, and I would never have got there. I don't actually remember him playing for Rovers.
That's fair. I've
managed to blank that season out of my memory, thankfully.
Lucky
when you get to my age, there's only so much you can keep up here, and thankfully that season's been pushed out.
We don't need to dwell on this. Anyway, thank you for taking the time, of course, to listen. We will be back with a full debrief following the Arbroath game. Hopefully we can have a positive display, much in the same way that we did the last time against Arbroath for the 3-0 victory at Starks. But yeah, of course, as we say, thanks for taking the time to listen, and we will catch you for the post-match podcast. Bye for now.